Hi everyone, I am still getting over strep throat, so you're gonna have to bear with me for this entire video. Strap in. As a writer, I love analyzing TV and movies. Ranking stuff is fun too, so here we go. Who of the Avatar villains is really the most terrifying? A lot of my opinion is going to hinge on my definitions of what's bad in the world and what actions are worse than others. This isn't going to just be based off of bending. There are a lot of people like Toph or Hama who develop niche skills within their abilities, but I don't think that automatically makes them the most powerful. Or it doesn't necessarily make them the most terrifying force to be reckoned with. I'm going to be talking about characters' abilities, but also the level of impact they have on society, their ideologies, their personalities, and the overall goals that they have as villains. I'm going to be ranking the bad guys in both eras that have a TV series. I'm not going to be including spirits. Maybe I'll make a separate video on those. I don't know. Let me know if you want me to rank the spirits of the Avatar world as well. That sounds like fun.
Ty Lee, could that possibly be you? Azula!
Ty Lee is a powerful opponent, no doubt about it. She's the strongest non-bender in the series, just above Suki. What makes her scary is how easy she is to underestimate. She's young, small, and attractive, and genuinely sweet.
Was it just me, or was that guy kinda cute?
For her to be able to take down a group of full-grown, earthbending guards with ease using chi blocking, and without sustaining any harm, proves how smart, skilled, and confident she is in her abilities.
Good try, but no.
All that said, Ty Lee is only a villain in the series as an accident of birth. She was born into the Fire Nation, and no doubt experienced the propaganda and indoctrination that all students in the nation do, especially since she attended the Royal Fire Academy for girls. She was also friends with Azula, a member of the royal family, from a very young age. And it's clear that because of Ty Lee's upbringing and Azula's need for control, that Ty Lee has always wanted to impress Azula.
Nice speech, Azula. It was pretty and poetic, but also scary in a good way.
This loyalty comes from her own personal struggles with self-esteem and fear. Despite Ty Lee's skill set, I wouldn't say she's a mean-spirited person, much less evil. She's easily pressured and bullied by Azula into doing things she doesn't want to do.
The universe is giving me strong hints that it's time for a career change. I want to join you on your mission.
I thought you ran off and joined the circus. You said it was your calling.
Well, Azula called a little louder.
And the only time she protests throughout the series is not in defense of herself, but for another friend, Mai. I believe that many of Ty Lee's actions throughout the series are done because she doesn't want to lose approval from her friends, nor does she want to be hurt. If Azula hadn't shown up at the circus, Ty Lee would have continued to travel the world as an acrobat, and likely would have distanced herself even further from the Fire Nation's beliefs. Her aura is pink, even though she's on the wrong side. Yes, she's complacent, and she chooses to do harm, which lands her a spot on this list. But I've put her at the bottom because she'd be way more terrifying if she actually wanted to take over the world. As the series progresses, she befriends the Kyoshi warriors and joins their group. And in the literature that follows the TV series, we see that Ty Lee only attacks in self-defense, or defending someone else, never out of spite, again and again and again. If she weren't from the Fire Nation, she'd definitely do well among the air nomads.
Please tell me you're here to kill me.
It's great to see you, Mai.
Mai's analysis is going to be similar to Ty Lee's. They have a lot in common. I don't think she's as dangerous as Ty Lee when it comes to fighting or skill, but I do think she's more of a threat because of her mindset. It doesn't take any pressure or even convincing for Mai to join Azula and Ty Lee on their quest to capture the Avatar, and Zuko. Instead, she says she'd love to join. And her reason? Boredom.
Finally, something to do.
She's also willing to call off a deal during a hostage negotiation, of which her infant brother is one of the hostages. She does this at Azula's suggestion, which shows she is able to be manipulated like Ty Lee. However, it's hard to tell if Mai struggles with this decision, as she doesn't seem overly concerned about getting Tom Tom back. Don't worry, the Aang gang returns him. Though this might not be because she doesn't care. Maybe it's just difficult for her to express how much she cares. Mai is a quiet soul, something that is explained later when we learn about her strict upbringing.
I was a rich only child who got anything I wanted, as long as I behaved, and sat still and didn't speak unless spoken to. My mother said I had to keep out of trouble. We had my dad's political career to think about.
I don't really think she's seeking to do much harm either, or even engage in things that require her to expend too much energy.
Just take the bear.
Let's go!
A person prone to boredom who knows how to throw deadly projectiles could certainly be a recipe for disaster.
Otherwise known as evil!
Mei isn't evil though. She does care about people. She genuinely wants Zuko to be happy. She also cares about Ty Lee, despite their differences in personality. I wonder if she would have been more hesitant to join Azula if Ty Lee hadn't also come along. She isn't afraid of Azula in the way that Ty Lee is, and we see hints of this early on.
Disgusting. Come on, you heard Azula. We have to follow them.
She can shoot all the lightning she wants at me. I am not going in that wall sledge juice.
Both Mei and Ty Lee's fighting styles, despite their ability to do more harm, focus on disabling opponents rather than killing them. After the TV series, Mei even goes on to get a job as a flower shop assistant, able to express herself more openly now that she's distanced herself from the Fire Nation after the war. Like I said, I don't think she's evil, but I do think she's a step above Ty Lee in terms of being terrifying, because she has more confidence.
I love Zuko more than I fear you.
No, you miscalculated. You should have feared me more.
She does end up standing up to Azula, which effectively ends their friendship.
Hello, Zuko here.
Zuko, oh Zuko. His arc is one that comes with pages and pages of analyses, but I'm going to try to keep this brief. Zuko is a troubled teen, to say the least. From the very beginning, we see that he is someone who isn't wanting or willing to hurt the people he loves, or even stand by when people are going to be harmed or killed without remorse. He has a sense of love and morality because of his mother, but after a series of traumatic, painful, and cruel events, we're introduced to a Zuko at the beginning of the series who is angry, impulsive, jealous, and self-serving. What makes Zuko complex is a lot of this anger and pain, most of us would say, is justified. He was never given the love he deserved from a large portion of his family, left feeling out of place, and his mother disappears from his life at an early age, leaving him with members of his family who subject him to emotional and physical abuse.
Dad's going to kill you. Really, he is.
I won't fight you.
You will learn respect, and suffering will be your teacher.
When he is banished, he wants nothing more than to belong. He's willing to capture a 12-year-old boy and turn him over to his father to be executed if it means he'll finally have his approval. While not a prodigy like his sister, Zuko is a powerful bender, and his temper makes him dangerous. Although his behavior can be understood if you look at the path he was on to get him here, it doesn't make him healthy in his mindset or right in his actions. He displays the bigotry and judgment he learns as a member of the royal family and the Fire Nation.
You little peasant. You found a master, haven't you?
Zuko has flickers of growth and improvement by the second season, but still makes poor decisions leading into the third. I love that the series gave us a character who is a bad person, but grows into a good person through the aid of others, and most importantly, choices he makes autonomously. Being a bad person once or many times doesn't mean you have to be that way forever.
They make me look totally stiff and humorless.
Actually, I think that actor's pretty spot on.
How could you say that?
Let's forget about the Avatar and get massages.
How could you say that?
But his redemption arc doesn't erase the fact that he is an antagonist and villain in the series, one of the primary ones. He is not an evil person, but I would put him above Ty Lee and Mei because his motivations before this redemption are indeed selfish, destructive, and scary if you think about who Zuko could have become if he lacked guidance from Uncle Iroh and Ursa.
You know, if you'd like to learn how a real pro bends, I could give you some private lessons.
You want to go toe-to-toe with me, pretty boy?
Okay, I feel like we're starting to get into characters who are actually villains now, or at least clear antagonists. Tahno is introduced to us in the first few episodes of The Legend of Korra. He's a pro-bender and the leader of the Wolf Bats, a team that has cheated their way to the top by paying off referees to use illegal moves during matches. He's also outright assaulted people with his bending. That all said, yeah, Tahno places higher on the list for me because of his motivations and actions, but if I could, I would put him near rock bottom in terms of bending. He's a professional bender, so he has some skill, but Tahno has also cheated to get to where he is in the professional matches, which has me calling into question how powerful he actually is. He's also shown to be quite cowardly when in danger. Granted, if I saw Amon walking toward me, I would shit myself, so I don't know how tough he'd be in a fight. I agree with Korra. He's a pretty boy. I imagine he'd be the first one down in a bar fight, but I'd put him above the others in terms of terrifying villainous because he's a straight up He doesn't have any internal conflict that we see surrounding his wrongdoings. It's obvious to everyone that the wolf bats cheat and are controversial, and Tahno just gloats about it. He's smug. Unlike Zuko, Mei, or Ty Lee, he doesn't choose to grow until he is literally forced to do so because his bending is taken away by Amon. He doesn't have a change of heart until he has nowhere else to turn.
I've been to the best healers in the city. Whatever Amon did to me, it's permanent.
He actually does have a redemption arc later in the series. I kind of forgot about it because he's more of a minor character as The Legend of Korra goes on. He has his bending restored by Korra and plays professionally for charity. He also plays the trombone at a wedding in the final episode with the main cast in attendance, so we can assume that there's no bad blood between them.
But I believe you have a common interest.
Master Yu and Xin Fu are other tertiary characters in the Avatar series that are big meanies. Xin Fu runs Earth Rumble 6 and is a bounty hunter, and is likely shisty with some of his business practices. Master Yu was Toph's earthbending instructor and a teacher to many before they joined forces. Hired by Toph's parents to bring her home, they both work together to stalk and kidnap a 12-year-old girl. Xin Fu actually threatens to bring Toph back even if she's dead at one point.
That's okay. Because she's wanted dead or alive.
No, she's not. I'm certain her father wants her alive.
While Master Yu is the softer of the two, their foils and crime dynamic doesn't keep them from being proper antagonists. They're both driven by their lust for money and attempt to capture others with a bounty on their heads if it leads to a greater payday. They're both selfish enough not to display any remorse for what they do, and resourceful enough to track people down. They're also smart enough to trick someone like Toph and capture her in a metal box so she can't earthbend, making them more of a danger than a pair of bad guys who just stumble their way through a plan.
I'm going to be stuck in here forever with you, aren't I?
I have to go to the bathroom.
That said, they are thwarted by smarter opponents, and I wouldn't say that they're particularly impressive in terms of bending or villainy. The retired commander of the Southern Raiders, a lot of Yon Rha's evil doings are up to interpretation and happen off-screen, but a big one that we know for sure is he is the man who killed Katara's mom, and chose to do so when he could have taken her as a prisoner. Confronted by Katara in his retirement years later, we see that Yon Rha is incredibly cowardly. He likely benefited in the past from the overall dominance and power of the Fire Nation held over the masses, meaning he didn't need to be too intimidating on his own.
I did a bad thing. I know I did. And you deserve revenge. So why don't you take my mother? That would be fair.
He's even so afraid of Katara that he offers his own mother as a trade. While he's linked to a big event in the series, and a huge one for Katara's arc, Yon Rha as a character is minor enough that this explanation is one of the shorter ones.
I'm not concerned with snappy put-downs in the press. I'm facing this calamity just like every other citizen. There's a tree growing right through my office. You think I'm not doing everything I can to get rid of it?
President Raiko is as evil as any politician who knows how to play the game once they learn the rules, and is self-serving. Do with that what you will. He's 26th for me because while he starts off more passive in his role, his antagonistic traits more subtle, he has a lot more power and influence than even the benders below him on this list because of his position as a leader. He doesn't act when it would be altruistic for him to do so. In Season 2, by providing support to the South Pole during a civil war. He slyly threatens Mako and his job when he and Korra are dating, not wanting Korra to do anything that threatens the safety of Republic City. Though we can also pick up on his fear of her impacting his image as president. While ineffective in many ways, in Season 3 and 4, he's wise enough to alter the public perception of Korra, and even unlawfully banishes Korra when she poses enough of an annoyance to him.
The vines and the spirits are here to stay.
Well, you know who's not here to stay? You! I order you to leave this city. You've caused nothing but trouble since you arrived.
He passes blame for Republic City's state off on her, and seems to want to do little to actually solve his people's issues. Later, he surrenders Republic City to Kuvira, which leaves many residents feeling abandoned by him. In the comics following the TV series, he's an outright antagonist, competing with Zhu Li for his position in office. The storyline in the comic involves the spirit portal, politicians using poisonous gas, and Raiko making a big oopsie-daisy that causes the gas to jeopardize the public's safety. He also flees during this, showing his cowardice and costing himself the election. He's not a bloodthirsty leader like some of the others we've seen in Avatar, but his actions are damaging and immoral. Even if he became the first president of Republic City with positive goals, that positivity dwindles the longer he's in office, and Raiko proves to be more concerned with power and image than the actual job he's been given.
Colonel Monkey and the Rough Rhinos are legendary. Each one is a different kind of weapons specialist. They are also a very capable singing group.
And here are their names: Monghae, Kaichi, Vashir, Ogure, and Yelu. Yes, I'm committed to the lore. Kind of easy to forget, but the Rough Rhinos actually show up in the series more than I remembered, and they do some pretty big bad guy things. A big one is they killed Jet's parents, among many other villagers, burning it down so the remaining become refugees. While it's not said in the TV series, it's canon that the group was formed by Fire Lord Ozai to track down Onamu, a former Fire Army general who had defected to the Earth Kingdom and stolen secret war plans, and to either capture or kill him, whatever they saw fit. They also attack Team Avatar and kidnap Sokka, and they capture Iroh and assault him and Zuko.
It's nice to see old friends.
Too bad you don't have any old friends that don't want to attack you.
Old friends that don't want to attack me.
Working under contract as a group of mercenaries, it seems that the only redeeming factor for the Rough Rhinos is that they can sing. They have an impact on the lives of many people and do so ruthlessly. But while they suck, I don't have them higher on the list because they're not major enough characters, and when our heroes face them throughout the series, they're easily bested for such a specialized group.
You're insane. You knew that when you hired me. Bolin, do the thing. Unhook the cars. Oh, come on, that was an easy one.
Icknick Blackstone Varrick, one of my favorite characters in the franchise. Yes, he's f***ing hilarious, and he ends up being part of the main cast later on the side of the good guys. But up until then, he's also pretty terrifying. For some people, he'd probably be lower on their villain list. But Varrick is not a good person, at least not in the same vein as someone like Zuko in terms of a redemption arc. He has several episodes and moments where he makes decisions for the greater good, but I have him ranked here because of his impulsivity and ability to conduct investments and inventing sessions that yield huge ripple effects.
I think I'm running out of air. Julie, hold your breath.
I'm not holding my breath.
Great! Now we're both gonna die!
Varrick is the very definition of chaotic neutral. Good God, could you imagine trying to take this man's keys away after you've been out drinking together? He plans his prison cell ahead of time.
Varrick Industries built this prison, and I had this cell made special. I had a feeling I'd end up here one day.
But any of his foresight aids him, not others. Varrick comfortably lies to everyone. He's cunning and manipulative, not just as a businessman, but interpersonally too, when he desires to be. He plays a hand in the launch of the Civil War to protect his business interests. He produces propaganda films against an antagonist, but it shows he's not above acts that are immoral to get what he wants. He robs Asami's company, Future Industries. He tries to bribe Mako and also frames him for crimes he himself committed. He attempts to kidnap the president of Republic City. He breaks out of prison when he's finally arrested. He modernizes Hiroshi Sato's mecha tanks that Kuvira later uses, and even if that wasn't his intention, again, he just doesn't think through the possibility of his technology falling into the wrong hands.
Why do you have a timer and a remote?
Well, first I built the timer, but then I thought you could drag me off the train, so then I built a remote. But then I thought, well, now do I really need the timer anymore because I got a remote in my head? Whatever! I'm covering all my bases!
His involvement with dangerous power sources and Kuvira's Colossus invention in the final season is when we finally see Varrick have a change of heart. However, a big part of this is a perceived personal slight and betrayal from Zhu Li.
You'll be sorry you left me, Zhu Li! When they write the history books, your name will be synonymous with betrayal!
And that seems to motivate him a bit more than his conscience that he says is popping up. Varrick is funny and zany, but also incredibly smart. His inventions and actions have effects on thousands of people, their livelihoods, and even their lives. If he were outright evil,
why so serious?
I'd have him close to the top of the list. An inventor and Beyonce to one of the other villains on this list, I don't have too much to say about Baatar Jr. He is a villain, and I couldn't ignore him, and I had to put him somewhere. He's above Varrick because, while they're similar in a lot of ways, they're non-bending inventors who are really smart, and both end up redeemed after doing bad things. Baatar takes a bit longer to do so. Okay. Frankly, I don't want to talk about Baatar Jr. because he's kind of boring. He believes in all the messed up stuff Kuvira is doing, helps orchestrate all of these things, and does a lot of evil things, all with a really stupid haircut. He also betrays his entire family. He doesn't have as strong a conscience as Varrick. Wow, I cannot believe I just said that sentence out loud. Until his fiancée tries to murder him. I guess that's a solid catalyst for introspection. I'll have more detailed explanations after this, but here, he's 22nd.
Grab hold of me, Katara.
People may not agree with Jet making it on this list because he acts as a friend sometimes, and the Aang gang is really sad when he dies. I think you're wrong. If Zuko is on this list, Jet sure as is. Jet is a terrorist, you guys. Are we gonna forget that because he's kinda hot and lives in a cool treehouse? Like the main cast, Jet has endured horrible suffering due to the 100-Year War. Firebending mercenaries destroyed his village and killed his parents, leaving him an orphaned refugee. What's justified is his pain. His warped beliefs and actions are not. Jet develops a xenophobic hatred for everyone from the Fire Nation.
Please, let me go. Have mercy. Does the Fire Nation let people go? Does the Fire Nation have mercy?
And thinks it's right to kill them all, innocent or otherwise. He orchestrates several acts of terror as the leader of the freedom fighters, and hatches a plan to flood an entire town, murdering the Fire Nation soldiers who live there and the civilians. Because of his unresolved trauma, Jet is paranoid that everyone from the Fire Nation wants to kill him, or is attempting to silence him or ruin his life.
Jet, relax. So the old guy had some hot tea. Big deal.
He heated it himself. Those guys are firebenders.
When he learns that Zuko and Iroh are firebenders, well, just Iroh, he assumes this of Zuko because of the association. He stalks them in an attempt to prove their origins, hoping to run them out of Ba Sing Se. He forgets that even the Fire Nation has fellow refugees who may be looking for a new life. While he is a victim of a corrupt police force and is brainwashed, and he does attempt to attack Long Feng, I personally don't think that absolves him or redeems him prior to his death. If he doesn't want to take down the Fire Nation soldiers, he wants to take down the Dai Li. Yes, both are guilty of bad things, but Jet seems incapable of recognizing that he is in turn doing things that are just as bad, if not worse, than some of his enemies. His primary motivation is revenge. He doesn't need the Dai Li to brainwash him to perform horrible acts. Justifying that it's okay for you to do something wrong for the right reasons, and saying you've made amends whilst continuing to act out of spite, is a scary, ego-driven way to wreak havoc. I commend the writers for creating a character that has taken an ideology the protagonist can side with, but has warped it and taken it too far. He's the first of many complex villains like this. Maybe Jet could have become a better person after reuniting with the main cast, but because we don't truly get to see him change, and his motivations are murky while he's brainwashed, like how much of him is there and how much of him isn't, I can't be too sympathetic for who he might have become if he made it out from under Lake Laogai. Amon's lieutenant, or mustache guy, is the second in command of the Equalists. He's a skilled fighter and outright sadistic and torturous in his attacks. He fully supports all of the Equalists' acts of terror and what I deem the ethnic cleansing of benders. There's not much more to glean from him as we don't have a detailed backstory. He's an all-around antagonist and never displays any redeeming qualities.
Amon! Everything the Avatar said is true, isn't it? I just saw you bloodbend her. You traitor! I dedicated my life to you!
He becomes a body in a pile of planks by the end, but dying doesn't make him a hero. I kind of like that we don't know his name. I also kind of wish it was Rudolph or something.
Avatar Korra, it is an honor to meet you. My name is Aiwei.
Thanks for having us.
Is this everyone?
Yep, just us. So, can I meet the new airbender?
Of course. Right this way.
I love a man with a nice facial piercing, but Aiwei has an evil Mr. Clean with reading glasses thing going on. The advisor to Suyin Beifong, Aiwei is a secret terrorist and anarchist, a member of the Red Lotus, and manipulative enough to become a most trusted person to the leader of the Metal Clan, all while harboring an evil plan for years and years and never tipping anyone off.
Surprise, motherfucker!
In fact, he can easily lie and frame other people to cover his tracks because he has earned this level of trust. A powerful earth and metal bender, Aiwei is also able to sense when someone is lying using earthbending, the same skill Toph demonstrates in Season 2 of Avatar. Because of this, he's the only person who can keep a secret. He's not the most impressive of the villains in the season, and it doesn't feel like he does too much in comparison. Aiwei is really just a mole, a loose end who gets thrown into the fog of lost souls. But like the lieutenant, he's an antagonist through and through who helps the main villains in their evil doings. While he makes some mistakes, and the Red Lotus ultimately fails in their plan to kill Korra, there is a lot that Aiwei does underground and behind the scenes. He tips off the Red Lotus that Korra is in Zaofu and helps them infiltrate. Maybe he's not the leader of the pack, but if even the followers of a group like the Red Lotus are this skilled in bending and deception, oof. It's a good thing they were locked up for so long.
Zuko, watch out! It's Sparky Boom Man!
You know, I'm starting to think that name doesn't quite fit.
A silent, creepy character, Combustion Man doesn't have the hair-sniffing thing that the Thin Man does in Charlie's Angels, but his glare and presence is definitely unsettling. A bounty hunter and assassin hired by Zuko to kill Aang, not much is known about the Seaman. But I like that. He may not have the political control that we see with characters below him on the list, but he's still responsible for mass murder of people and ruining the lives of those close to them. We don't know how many victims he has, but I assume it's high considering his level of professionalism as an assassin, his skills in stealth, and the fact that he is exceptionally hard for the Aang gang to defeat. Sparky can track his targets down, intercepts any information related to them, and seems deft at conducting himself as an assassin without a trace. He also has a unique ability within firebending. Hence the name. What's also intense about him as a villain, a little flicker of personality for a character who doesn't speak, is his drive to kill a target isn't financially motivated. Zuko offers to pay him even more to stop hunting Aang, but that isn't enough to deter him. In his 3 eyes, the only way to complete the mission is to have all of his victims eliminated.
Children. Sorry to frighten you. My name is Hama.
I like to think of myself as the puppet master of the group.
To my knowledge, Hama is the only waterbending villain we see in Avatar until Legend of Korra comes along. She certainly leaves her mark on the series. This episode of Avatar the Last Airbender did give me nightmares as a kid when it first came out. Hama is a lot like Jet. She's an individual who saw her loved ones and herself ravaged by the Fire Nation's army. Yet, her manner of dealing with the war is, shall we say...
Who brought you here?
It was no spirit.
It was a witch.
A witch? What do you mean? She seems like a normal old woman, but she controls people like some dark puppet master.
Hama! Yes, the innkeeper.
unhealthy. As a young woman, Hama is captured and imprisoned by the Fire Nation after a raid of the Southern Water Tribe, and spends years locked up until she develops a technique that leads to her escape.
Blood bending.
Ew. 70 years later, she's living in a Fire Nation village as a kind little old lady innkeeper. Ah, wrong! Hama is manipulative psychologically and physically. She uses her control over others as a bloodbender to imprison citizens of the Fire Nation and an eye for an eye act, leaving them to rot as she was meant to. Hama is another one of the sadistic baddies on this list. That, coupled with her resourcefulness and genuine desire to watch those who've wronged her suffer, maybe it's good she only remained an innkeeper in a small village and didn't aspire beyond some little town torture. Could you imagine if her and Azula teamed up? Oh no. I've also seen some theories that Hama's bloodbending and the threat she posed after escaping prison may have influenced Water Tribe sieges after that point. Maybe that's why Yon Rha killed Katara's mother, to avoid another powerful bender like this in the future. If that's true, that's really sad, because along with forcibly teaching Katara to bloodbend, Hama has caused harm to her own people through her acts.
My work is done. Congratulations, Katara. You're a bloodbender.
She's so far gone in her delusion by the time the main cast meets her, she can only gloat that her work is done and Katara will pass on her legacy. It kind of feels like I'm sneaking this guy into this video. Jin the Conqueror is not a villain we see much of, and he's restricted to flashbacks, but he's a canon character nonetheless, and I can't ignore his evil doings. Taking advantage with the Earth Kingdom's dissatisfaction with the current ruler, he amassed a giant army and gained control of the whole continent before Kyoshi, stopped him.
But you didn't really kill Jin. Technically, he fell to his own doom because he was too stubborn to get out of the way.
Personally, I don't really see the difference.
He unified the kingdom, but it's clear that it wasn't done peacefully. He's a warlord. He's also tiny. They were definitely going for a Napoleon reference, I think. Oh, fun fact. Did you know that Napoleon actually wasn't that short? He was around 5'6" or 5'7", which might be short by today's standards when you see any basketball team, but he was average to taller than most Frenchmen. He just prioritized an army and guards who were huge, beefy guys who looked bigger next to him, and then a lot of it was also a smear campaign by his critics. Okay, history lesson over. Anyway, Jin the Conqueror, bad dude, megalomaniac. He's 16th. The Grand Secretariat is a corrupt meanie. Who knew? Long Feng is one of the most influential and feared officials in Ba Sing Se, and it's clear to see why. He had the utmost trust of the Earth King, something he had carefully orchestrated over his career by censoring and altering information the royal received. This was how he weaseled his way into becoming the primary one responsible for international affairs. He not only exhibits this strict control over the Earth King, but the people of Ba Sing Se, too. Long Feng is in charge of the Dai Li, a secret police force responsible for false arrest, false imprisonment, and brainwashing of anyone who mentions the 100-Year War, or other aspects of the world outside of the walls of the city that could incite panic, and threaten everything Long Feng has built. He has entire groups of people responsible for maintaining the status quo. Like his army of Judies, pretty young women who he subjects to brainwashing, hypnosis, and posing as a handler for new people in the city. He also clearly has citizens fearful of speaking out, as it will impact their status or even safety.
Why is everyone here so scared to talk about the war?
Look, I'm just a minor government official. I've waited 3 years to get this house. I don't want to get into trouble.
Neighbors spying on neighbors. I think we're supposed to infer that the means of hypnosis, brainwashing, and thought control all started with him, which bolsters how insidious he is. I put him above advisors like Aiwei. They're both corrupt, but Long Feng has what I consider to be a greater impact. He has an entire city under his control, and this city is also responsible for the affairs that trickle out into the rest of the Earth Kingdom. He has no problem using people as pawns and harming them in the process, and killing even children when he's finished with them. Plus, this asshole stole Appa. I hope when he skipped across Lake Laogai, he cracked a rib.
You're ruining the koi pond! It's completely overshadowed by the topiaries. Guards, take that buffoon away and get me someone who knows what they're doing!
I love Hou Ting's outfit, but that's it. The poor citizens of Ba Sing Se have been dealt a lot of shitty leaders, huh? At least they can visit Iroh's tea shop. The minor ill-mannered actions of Hou Ting involve poaching and dining on rare animals, including her father's pet bear.
What a bitch.
And verbally abusing her subordinates. I can't imagine the people working for her at the palace are making a fair wage or have a decent benefits plan.
Well, we don't even have dental.
Her major baddie bad person actions include theft, animal cruelty, conspiracy, mass kidnapping of airbenders and subsequently slavery, child abuse, brainwashing, and extortion. I don't want to say I'm pro-murder and okay with Zaheer suffocating her via breath bending, but I ain't sad about it. While not a bender, Hou Ting is incredibly powerful as a villain, and what's terrifying is because of her status, she not only believes she has a right as a queen to do as she pleases, she also has support. While there are Earth Kingdom citizens who oppose her, there are plenty who agree with her and worship her.
Don't talk like that about Her Majesty. Long may she reign.
This is why propaganda and indoctrination is dangerous, kids. Please stay informed and vote for what you truly want, even if we don't personally agree on the same things. Her tyrannical rule is only brought to an end because of her death, and due to the state she drove Ba Sing Se and the Earth Kingdom to during her rule, it's easy to argue that she is to blame for Kuvira's rise in the 4th season.
But pledge your loyalty to me, and I'll give you a new purpose in your lives. Of course, if you don't want to join, you could always stay right here. Hopefully, someone saves you before the next train speeds through.
The first time I saw Season 4 of Legend of Korra, I had mixed feelings on Kuvira. I love Zelda Williams and was excited to see a female villain for Korra to go up against, especially someone similar in physicality and age. She took some warming up to, as I felt some of her dialogue and the dialogue for Season 4 in general was a little on the nose.
Maybe you need to spend some time in a re-education camp.
I thought that's where we send people to learn new trade skills.
Hard truths, Bolin.
Your loyalty seems to be wavering.
However, in rewatching the series multiple times, I saw a lot of solid writing in Kuvira, and I think she's pretty terrifying and compelling as an antagonist. I haven't mentioned it until now, but each villain in The Legend of Korra is an allegory for a political ideology. Kind of obvious when you watch it, and I really like this because after a 100-year war, where several nations have a common enemy, it is natural that varying ideologies and types of leaders will crop up to take control. Kuvira is similar to Hitler, Mussolini, and Mandic as she adheres to fascist ideals. Important ideology note! Communism and fascism aren't the same thing. A lot of people mix these up. The biggest nugget you can keep in your mind is the ideology of fascism centers around a state or single dictator being in control, while communism is the ideology that all ownership of things like property is eliminated and all are equal, except for a ruling class that makes certain decisions for everybody. Fascism still has a class structure and power structure, one that is very authoritarian. Communism doesn't, although some people have to figure out how the wealth in a system like that gets distributed, and historically these people in charge never do. Weird how that doesn't make any sense with your ideology, but come for me, Stalin's ghost. Okay, sorry. So, Kuvira, she's an incredible tactician, intelligent, and charismatic, not unlike other female villains in the Avatar world. However, Kuvira lacks some of the instability and impulsivity when her power is threatened. She is driven, pragmatic, and will fight to the bitter end. However, she still shows enough restraint for it to be I guess I'd say, fair fight. Kuvira will win by any means necessary, but not if it will put her in harm's way. She won't lose her cool even though she wants to win, and will put up a fight for it. She's willing to sacrifice the life of her fiancé Baatar for the sake of her bigger picture, her plan to take down Republic City and reclaim the land that was stolen from the Earth Kingdom. She achieves a lot in a short span of time, and does so without any hesitation. I don't think Kuvira is a good person, or an anti-hero, or anything like that. She's definitely a bad egg, but she is more complex in her alignment than other antagonists. She isn't redeemed by the end of the series, at least not in my opinion, but she is in the comics that follow.
No, we'll join. Don't leave us here.
We pledge our loyalty to you, Great Uniter.
Kuvira chooses the name, the Great Uniter, for a reason. She does want loyalty from her subordinates and doesn't tolerate anything less, using force, harm, and punishment as a response. But Korra remarks that she sees a lot of herself in Kuvira. Kuvira wanted to create a society where her people would never be vulnerable again. But don't forget, she takes her stance on this way too far, and is a dictator at the end of the day. She's self-aware enough to want to atone for her mistakes.
I'll accept whatever punishment the world sees fit.
But the mistakes she made were big ones, and she also made some willful, thought-out choices that were not just mistakes. They were really big, damaging choices. The regret only came after her defeat, and that's why she's ranked 13th.
No, but you have. Zhang said you had no restraints.
Did you know Zhao was voiced by Lucius Malfoy? Now you do. It might surprise people I have Zhao this high on the list because he's only in season 1. He's a great firebender, but we never see any lightning from him or big booms from his forehead. Side note, Zhao has a pretty big forehead. Zhao is, well, was, the spirit of the Koi murdered him, a solid antagonist and a greater threat than Zuko in terms of aggression, hot-headedness, and a bloodthirsty fighting style. Zhao is not only willing to harm or kill his human enemies, but spirits as well. He's destructive of natural landscapes and property. Zhao is also responsible for the burning of the scrolls and books in Wan Shi Tong's library that have anything to do with the Fire Nation. He is cunning enough to do all that so he can protect the Fire Nation's army from their enemies, but reckless enough to damage his own ships and resources when angered. When Zhao is in the library, he learns about the Koi spirits and decides he is going to kill the Moon Spirit, rendering the waterbenders powerless so the Fire Nation can finally take the North Pole.
Don't bother.
Zhao! Don't.
It's my destiny to destroy the moon and the water tribe.
Destroying the moon won't hurt just the water tribe. It will hurt everyone, including you.
He neglects the pleas of both Aang and Iroh, not caring that the Moon Spirit's death will mean harm and imbalance for everyone on Earth, including himself. He does end up killing the Koi, seeing it as worth it if the Fire Nation will have leverage in any capacity. Zhao also cares a lot about his image.
Zhao the Moon Slayer. Zhao! The Invincible! Get it off!
His pride and honor, and his level of power, even more so than Zuko. There are a lot of ways to interpret this moment between them at the end before Zhao dies, but I always saw it as one final sign of vanity. Zhao doesn't want Zuko's mercy or pity. He would rather die than accept help from someone he holds resentment for or perceives as weak. When we see him one final time in Legend of Korra, it makes perfect sense that he is wandering the fog of lost souls. Zhao's psyche is fraught with conflict, anger, self-preservation, and egoism. He personifies the worst parts of the Fire Nation and the war. He's also the most outright introduction to many of these facets in season 1, before other villains on this list make a fully fledged appearance. If Batman grew into a racist after the death of his loved ones, he'd have ended up like Hiroshi Sato. Sato is a self-made businessman who has designed several innovations in the Avatar world that have improved people's quality of life, and has also contributed to the further divide between benders and non-benders, something I'll elaborate more on soon. The highest ranked non-bender on the list, Sato may not be the leader of the Equalists, but his contributions as a follower are utterly horrifying. He makes the gloves the Equalists use, their lightning rods, the mecha tanks, cars, airships, and airplanes.
Where does Hiroshi find the time to keep inventing new evil machines?
All used for the Civil War in Republic City. His inventions also shaped the resources and weapons for future antagonists in the series, irreversibly so. Even if he has a change of heart, that evil lives on. He is hypocritical in his methods as a businessman too. He employs benders within his companies and supports the Fire Ferrets, and benefits financially and socially from these decisions, despite harboring a deadly hatred inside. He's willing to kill his own daughter when she fails to fall in line with his beliefs. Sato is not unlike other people throughout history who have created weapons of mass destruction. And, while sad, it's an immovable fact that no amount of regret will put a genie back in a bottle. Along with others high on the list, Hiroshi Sato and all his progress, good and bad, changes the entire world forever.
Why are you wasting my time with this pump? Just tell me what you want. Everyone else go.
While only mentioned and rarely seen, Azulon is still terrifying during his rule as Fire Lord. He is responsible for nearly wiping out all of the waterbenders in the Southern Water Tribe. His actions caused the divide between the North and the South Pole for decades, and he is also responsible for forming the Southern Raiders, who go on to kidnap Hama and later kill Kaya. Azulon is described as cruel and ruthless by family members and citizens alike while he is alive. When Iroh loses his son, his brother Ozai is not only lacking in sympathy, he attempts to usurp Iroh and suggests he would be a better fit for the throne. Azulon is outraged by this, seeming to favor Iroh over Ozai. I can't disagree with him on this, honestly. Maybe they drank tea together and Ozai preferred coffee, thus the childhood divide began. That said, Azulon's solution isn't having the two brothers sit and talk it out. Instead, he suggests that Ozai should understand what it means to lose a son, and orders him to kill Zuko. This explains a lot of Ozai's dysfunctional parenting methods later on. He also played a part in forcing Ozai and Ursa's marriage to protect the purity of the royal bloodline. That's probably the least evil, or more typical thing of a royal that he does. For a character we hardly see, you can't say he doesn't have a presence in the show. His villainous actions have long-term effects on characters across all nations in the series, right up to his immediate family. A tyrannical warlord through and through, he cracks the top 10.
Oh, it sounds like the firebending's back on.
I bet a lot of you were wondering when she'd show up. I'm going to keep Azula's evil deeds as concise as possible. If you want me to write to my heart's content, I could easily have an entire video dedicated to her. The youngest child and only daughter of Fire Lord Ozai, and sister to Zuko, Azula is a firebending prodigy and exceptional political and social negotiator. She is intelligent, manipulative, vicious, and murderous. Like, she kills Aang, a child, without thinking twice, and throughout the series is the only character from the Fire Nation who directly murders the Avatar. Sozin left Roku for dead. It's a dick move, but it's not the same.
What are you doing here?
You mean it's not obvious yet? I'm about to celebrate becoming an only child!
She attempts to murder her older brother multiple times, and when she thinks she has, she is quite pleased. There is no one she is unwilling to manipulate, except for her father, though I could see Azula pulling some daddy's little girl princess moves to stay out past her curfew. When it comes to interpersonal relationships, Azula is fixated on being liked, and is jealous of those who receive better treatment than her. However, she doesn't seem to be itching for acceptance. Relationships to her are another avenue for control.
Release him immediately.
It's not too late for you, Zuko. You can still redeem yourself.
The kind of redemption she offers is not for you.
Why don't you let him decide, Uncle?
She is okay with being feared by everyone around her if it means they will comply, but this is torturous for her by the end of the series. Azula's wires are crossed when it comes to compliance out of fear and support out of love. Azula is determined to win by any means necessary, but she is more emotional, a fact that angers her more than anyone else. I always interpreted these bursts of true emotion as a source of shame for Azula. Azula is used to being in control, being perfect. When she's not, she can't handle it. She's more immature than Kuvira in that way. She's also 14, it makes sense. And while I'd say immaturity is a weakness, I think it makes Azula more terrifying because she's inching toward unhinged.
But I can take her this time.
But even you admitted to your uncle that you would need help facing Azula.
There's something off about her. I can't explain it, but she's slipping.
Yes, she is. Looks like Cynthia. Kuvira accepts defeat. Azula can't accept defeat or opposition. Azula is also incredibly powerful because of her rage. She channels her anger and destructive nature into her firebending, and is better at this than Zuko. Zuko is more powerful than Azula when he leans into the good, fire is life, not destruction parts of his little honorable heart. But when her emotions get the better of her, it impacts her firebending, causing her to lack finesse. It's clear that Azula is damaged, and that is not entirely her fault. However, even from the beginning, we see she is wicked, vindictive, and cruel. She is evil enough at her core that it would take a lot for her to heal. I think it's safe to say that Azula displays narcissistic tendencies. Her self-esteem is actually incredibly low, something she will never admit out loud.
I don't have sob stories like all of you. I could sit here and complain how our mom liked Zuko more than me, but I don't really care. My own mother thought I was a monster. She was right, of course, but it still hurt.
She always felt that her mother was out to get her, and was jealous of Zuko, and felt that she deserved more than she could ever realistically receive from the world around her. Perfectionism can never be satisfied because it doesn't exist. I have some sympathy for Azula as a character, actually, because I personally believe that even someone who has a disorder like NPD can learn empathy and learn to love themselves. They just have to want to. But I don't know how likely it is that Azula will learn these emotionally intelligent skills. Or if she does, it certainly won't happen quickly. Even in the comics that follow Avatar, Azula still reverts to a lot of these learned behaviors and tendencies, despite showing some growth. I have to say, the writers of Avatar are really great at creating characters who feel human. No one is going to experience a complete 180 change in their personality when they start therapy. The reason I don't have Azula any higher on the list is because she's still young. And while her footprint on the world is certainly grand, it's not as grand or compelling as the remaining villains I have ranked above her.
They got Korra! They've got Korra!
Alright, I put them above Azula because... sorry, I think they're more powerful than her. A group of anarchists, terrorists, and supreme benders. The Red Lotus are, well, Zuko says it best.
Individually, they could take down any bender. Put them all together, they could take down the entire world.
Ming Hua is capable of psychic waterbending.
No.
Using this ability to give herself arms, as she was born without limbs. Then there's Ghazan, who can lava bend. The first time we see this skill in the franchise. And Pli has the same abilities as Sparky Sparky Boom Man.
I've waited 13 years to feel this warm.
Unlike the rough Rhinos, the Red Lotus have more screen time and development as characters as part of a group, which means we can better assess their personal beliefs and goals. I would say of the 4 members we see, that Ming Hua is the cruelest, another character voiced by Grey Delisle, and she's followed closely by Ghazan. Even within their group, they have varying perceptions of their mission, something that's very realistic.
He's the man who just took down the Earth Queen. You want to be next?
Ming Hua, please. We're here to help citizens like him, not hurt them.
Ming Hua differs most from Zaheer. Ghazan, the muscle of the group, almost always has the upper hand over his opponents, so much so that even when his back is against the wall, he goes out on his own terms.
You're coming with me!
Killing himself and attempting to bring Mako and Bolin with him. Pli, an assassin and arsonist prior to joining the Red Lotus, is the second strongest in terms of logic and bending, right after Zaheer. She appears to be even more of a threat than Combustion Man, as she is incredibly agile and astute while on the battlefield. She also takes on Zuko's dragon without breaking a sweat. What's important to note about Ming Hua, Ghazan, Pli, and Zaheer is their ability to withstand 13 years of imprisonment and interrogation without breaking. None of them reveal their motives, nor do they rat on each other. That is an alarming level of commitment to your beliefs and loyalty to your fellow bad guys. That kind of mental resolve would make any opponent formidable, regardless of their moral alignment. All of them attempted to kidnap Korra when she was a young girl. They all seek to plunge the world into chaos, as they believe it is the only natural order. While Korra isn't killed, they are successful in many ways, even after their deaths, in bringing chaos to the world. They are also indirectly responsible for the atrocities in the final season, instilling fear in the Earth Kingdom enough that Kuvira is able to rise to power. And they put Korra out of commission for a very long time.
What? Guru Lahima lived 4,000 years ago in the Northern Air Temple. It is said that he unlocked the secret of weightlessness and became untethered from the Earth, living his final 40 years without ever touching the ground.
Is that how you plan to escape?
Season 3 of Legend of Korra is my favorite. The main antagonist, Zaheer, is a tough one. I originally had him higher on the list because he learns how to airbend at a rapid pace, having only been a bender for a short period of time, but I also found it hard to put him above some of the others because of his level of impact and certain personality traits. He shows genuine love and compassion for his girlfriend and friends, and is willing to spare the lives of those he deems innocent in his mission. He is capable of regret. He's also right about some of the things going on in the world that are wrong.
I don't think our ideas of balance are the same.
Are you sure about that? You kept the spirit portals open, but why stop there?
You've had to deal with a moronic president and a tyrannical queen. Don't you think the world would be better off if leaders like them were eliminated?
No! I mean, I don't really agree with what they've done, but taking out world leaders isn't the answer.
It wasn't too long ago that the airbenders were nearly all wiped out, thanks to the Fire Lord's desire for world dominance.
That said, he is not a tragic villain, and any guilt or remorse he feels, any self-awareness, also only comes after his defeat. Zaheer is the leader of the Red Lotus, and they attempt to wipe out world leaders, or anyone who has control over the masses, to plunge the world into chaos.
All I wanted was to show the Avatar a better path for the world.
He sees this as the natural order of the world, and will do anything to shape the world to fit his vision. Zaheer is not above murder. In fact, he'll take a life without hesitation if he deems it necessary to achieve his overall goal, like the life of the Avatar, anyone who seeks to stop him, and the life of a tyrant queen like Hou Ting. Zaheer is manipulative toward Korra when he's trying to get her to surrender, using the air nomads as leverage, and he is shown going back on his word. He poisons Korra, and while he doesn't kill her, his actions have a long-lasting impact on her life afterward, physically and mentally. Despite being an anarchist, I'd say without a doubt that Zaheer is lawful evil. He feels so strongly about his moral code and honor that while he seeks to plunge the world into chaos, he isn't chaotic himself. But what makes him evil are his methods. Zaheer uses oppressive tactics even though he admonishes leaders who do the same. He doesn't want his name to be at the forefront of the Red Lotus's efforts, but he does believe that he is the one divinely chosen to bring these changes to the world. Zaheer is delusional. While he loves air nomad culture and its philosophies around freedom, we see that he has twisted and convoluted the words of Guru Lahima.
Do you know who once said, "New growth cannot exist without first the destruction of the old"?
No.
The wise Guru Lahima, an airbender.
Not unlike another villain higher on the list, Zaheer is an individual who has a strong religious or philosophical belief that he is distorted and bastardized along his path in pursuing it.
So we're living in a society. We're supposed to act in a civilized way.
He is imprisoned again at the end of Season 3, and in Season 4, he agrees to help Korra overcome her trauma so she can face Kuvira. That's more than any of the villains above him on this list would do, but rewarding him for that would be like praising someone for getting a D+ instead of an F. He also never states his regret in murdering anyone. Instead, he's remorseful that his plan didn't work, and so Kuvira rose to power. I like that we finally have an antagonist who is an airbender, and is all for meditation and nature, because we're reminded that a culture you find yourself in, or a lifestyle you adhere to, may seem good on the surface, but that doesn't automatically make you a good person. And while he may not be as bad as the next few characters,
now you might want to ration that bowl of rice. You've got 3 weeks until the next shift change.
he's cold-blooded, and I think deserves to be ranked 7th.
You have redeemed yourself, my son. Welcome home.
Even though we don't see a ton of Ozai until later in the series, his presence as a villain is felt right off the bat. His sadism is clear to us every time we see Zuko's face on screen, and Azula for that matter, before we even see Ozai himself outside of a flashback. Azula and Zuko deal with the struggles they do because of their father. He is not only driven by his ego and need for control, Ozai also has no empathy. The only thing you can say about him as a positive is that he is a man of his word. He doesn't kill Zuko after making a deal with his wife Ursa, and he welcomes Zuko back after they believe Aang was killed to restore his honor. But let's talk about the things he does that negate his ability to keep a promise. Ozai attempts to usurp his brother to take the throne, and when his father tells him he should kill his own son, Ozai actually considers murdering his son.
Your mother did vicious treasonous things that night.
To spare their child's life, Ozai manipulates his wife Ursa into killing his father so he can rule the Fire Nation, and banishes her to keep this secret, threatening that if she ever comes back, he will kill both of their children without a second thought. When he feels disrespected disrespected by Zuko during a war meeting, he challenges him to a duel, and when Zuko refuses to fight, Ozai sees this as cowardice and permanently disfigures Zuko's face and almost costs him his sight in one eye. He believes that suffering will be his teacher, and sends him on a quest to capture the Avatar. No one has seen him for 100 years, which is a pretty clear way of Ozai saying he doesn't care if his son comes home, because it's highly unlikely he will ever find the Avatar. Ozai also tries to kill Zuko when he says he's going to join Aang's team to defeat him. Azula, who is loyal to him, is a pawn to her father, and nothing more.
Listen to me. I need you here to watch over the homeland. It's a very important job that I can only entrust to you.
Really?
And for your loyalty, I've decided to declare you the new Fire Lord.
During their childhood, he shows off his children as a means of endearing himself to his father, and doesn't seem concerned with his family outside of what they can do to elevate his level of power. Later in the comics, Ursa says it best that Ozai possesses no love for anyone, not even himself. Even after losing his bending, Ozai is still murderous, manipulative, and downright evil.
I shall be reborn as the supreme ruler of the world. From this moment on, I will be known as the Phoenix King.
When he still has his bending and becomes the Phoenix King, he truly believes the world is his. Ozai is content with destroying the entirety of the Earth Kingdom with fire, which includes his own colonists, by the way. It's not about anyone but him. Even his most loyal followers can be thrown away at a moment's notice. As a bender, Ozai is already incredibly powerful and physically fit. He's got a bit of a DILF bod going on, if I'm being honest. And he is only made stronger by Sozin's comet. When Aang refuses to kill him, Ozai uses this moment of mercy as an opportunity to have the upper hand.
I'm not gonna end it like this.
Even with all the power in the world, you are still weak.
The higher up we get on this list, the closer these villains are in terms of being terrifying. But make no mistake, even though he's not at the top, Fire Lord Ozai is a genocidal, loveless
It would be my honor and privilege to accept such a duty.
This is just another one of your ploys to gain more power, isn't it?
All I'm trying to do is help. Think back. 42 years ago, Republic City was threatened by another dangerous man, Yakone.
Fun fact, the Polish voice actor for Tarrlok, guess who else he provided a voice for?
Oh, you're a villain, all right. Just not a super one.
Yeah? What's the difference?
Presentation!
I actually like Tarrlok's 3 ponytails. It's a bold fashion choice, and one I think only a slightly crazy person would embrace, so it makes perfect sense. A member of the Council of Republic City, a powerful waterbender, and a man with a secret past, Tarrlok is great at intimidating people into doing what he wants, either through persuasion, pressure, or force, and is nothing shy of smug when he wins. We can tell right off the bat that he's a smarmy, power-hungry official.
Councilman Tarrlok. That is why, for all matters involving the Equalists, I will report directly to him. The police department will lend any and all available resources to the councilman and his task force.
Tenzin also accuses Tarrlok after Amon's attack on the pro-bending arena of resorting to illegal tactics to get Chief Saikon to offer support to his task force, and any other actions he takes against the Equalists. He implements a curfew for all non-benders, profiling that anyone who can't bend an element is automatically an Equalist, or criminal. We see him repeatedly lie and falsify evidence to cover up his agendas. He tries to bribe Korra into joining his task force with gifts initially, and when she doesn't cave, he orchestrates a public interview which pressures her into joining, exploiting Korra's temper he picked up on in their initial meetings.
I'll join Tarrlok's task force and help fight Amon.
There's your headline, folks.
He also outright tells Korra that he admires her willingness to go to extremes to get what she wants, and that it's a quality they both share. His ability to read people makes him as charismatic and perceptive as people like Azula, but his abilities as a waterbender put him miles ahead of Ozai and Azula. Tarrlok could have defeated both of them in the final 2 episodes within seconds. Sorry Aang, sorry Zuko.
We practiced constantly, and I hated every minute of it.
Learning to bloodbend as a young child, and becoming so skilled that he can do it without a full moon, Tarrlok is capable of turning his victims into puppets like Hama, but also rendering them immobile or even unconscious for periods of time.
Ew.
He admits later on that his father's ghost still shaped him into his adulthood, even after he did what he could to distance himself from his traumatic childhood, and worked to prove he was better than what was expected of him. Tarrlok doesn't get points for not wanting to become an evil bloodbender though. He's still a corrupt official in Republic City, and a dangerous one at that. Just because he waited until he was backed into a corner to bloodbend, and says he hates utilizing this skill, an extreme even he isn't willing to go to, doesn't prevent him from actually doing this. Tarrlok did want to rule Republic City, and even if he didn't try to accomplish this by literally taking control of other people, we can't even say he tried to do so within the legal parameters of society. Yes, he wanted to take down the Equalists, but Tarrlok wanted to win the battle, not save the people. He used his position to oppress and control them in other ways. Amon reminded him of the criminal acts his father committed and posed a challenge, a threat to his order. But if an underground group like the Equalists had been in support of Tarrlok, I doubt he'd bat an eye. Tarrlok apologizes to Korra and Mako after his defeat for all that he's done to harm them, and it seems sincere. He's ashamed. Boo-hoo. He can't bend anymore at that point, so you could punch him in the face and it wouldn't be met with too much retribution. He makes a decision later to kill both himself and his brother, removing a major threat from the world, but I kind of feel the same way about this as I did about Jet's death. It was sad to watch, it put a lump in my throat, I'm not made of stone, but I don't see this as Tarrlok redeeming himself. Is he a tragic villain? Maybe.
It's over. You're under arrest, Yakone.
What is Republic City coming to? Used to be a man could enjoy his lunch in peace.
Mr. Krabs, is that you? We only see Yakone through flashbacks, but they leave an impression, and not just because they're cool sepia-tone vignettes. Yakone was a crime lord who ruled the underworld of Republic City, and likely did a lot of bad guy things,
Otherwise known as evil!
for a long time before being put on trial for his illegal ability to bloodbend. What's crazy is he doesn't need a full moon like Hama, and this is a skill he passes on to his sons. Yakone can also psychically bloodbend, meaning he doesn't need any of his limbs or appendages free to do this, unlike Hama and Tarrlok. He is one of the most powerful bloodbenders we ever see until Aang strips him of his bending. However, Yakone is a man hell-bent on revenge and legacy, so much so that he escapes prison, undergoes surgery to change his identity, lies to his wife for their entire marriage, and teaches their two sons to do everything he can do, and unintentionally, more than he could ever do. Yakone may not have done as much to impact the world as others on this list. He only reigns over part of Republic City, but his personal vendetta is so strong that he teaches his sons the most powerful ability in the bending world, and ensures through an abusive upbringing that their use of this ability will always be for dangerous and self-serving reasons.
Without you, all my plans are suddenly possible. I have a vision for the future, Roku.
He may not be as powerful as Yakone or Tarrlok, but holy sh**. If Sozin wasn't near the top of this list, I think I would have to hand in my superfan badge and not give it back until I rewatched the entire series. Again. I thought it was cool that we learned a lot about Sozin through the eyes of Avatar Roku, his childhood friend. When terrible people do unspeakable things, why would we give a shit about how cute and squishy they were as a baby? Fair argument, but seriously, I like that the writers repeatedly try to remind us that people from any background are capable of both great good and great evil. Sozin undoubtedly falls into the latter category. He wants to see the Fire Nation's empire expand, and has a thirst for
world domination! Tell him we want world domination!
Against Roku's protests that the four nations should remain as they are, Sozin colonizes part of the Earth Kingdom, and ends a cherished friendship in the process.
But I warn you, even a single step out of line will result in your permanent end.
When Roku is battling a volcano to save his village in their elder years, Sozin comes to his aid in the name of that past friendship, only to leave him for dead when he realizes that without Roku around, his plans for world domination are possible. So he leaves him there, choking on poisonous gas in the ashes of his beloved home and island while his wife watches from a boat in sorrow. The dragon dies too. Sozin also became a dragon hunter after this.
Our DJ Francis moved to Japan to hunt dolphins. like a dickhead.
He goes on to conquer more of the world, and when the comet comes along, a comet that is then named after him, he harnesses the power of it to ambush all of the air temples with his armies and extinguishes the Air Nation. Yes, Aang survives, and later has a son who can airbend, and Tenzin has kids, but if you know anything about endangered species and reproduction, the air nomads were f***ed either way before harmonic convergence. Some people may as much as rabbits do, but biologically we can't produce that fast, I'm sorry to tell you. If Tenzin and his family all died in a tragic bison crash, game over. Sozin doesn't want his goals of expansion threatened, so he kills an entire race of people just to prevent this. His attempt to murder the Avatar wouldn't have ended the cycle of reincarnation, however. Side note, I don't want this dark joke to be misconstrued, just playing by the world's rules, but up until this point, no one knew that the only way to eradicate the Avatar for good would be to kill the person while they're glowing it up. So if Aang had been killed, they'd then have to go to the Water Tribes to find the Avatar after him, and then the Earth Kingdom, and maybe they'd luck out with the Fire Nation Avatar, but just so as not to chance it, poof, gone. I'm just imagining Sozin and every Fire Lord after him sending a team of people around the world on a routine basis to like find a magic baby and, you know, defeat them like a sick game of whack-a-mole. Anyway, Sozin's ambitions become generational amongst his family and within his nation. His children and grandchildren follow in his footsteps, and his people are made to believe one way or another that all of the war efforts are the ways the Fire Nation is spreading its gifts of prosperity and innovation. He radicalizes and weaponizes his citizens. His vision for the future is so twisted that he turns the rest of the world against his entire nation and causes 100 years of bloodshed, arson, suffering, xenophobia, and heartache. Sozin is the reason the entirety of the world of Avatar is the way it is when we see Aang pop out of the iceberg, and his actions even trickle into the Legend of Korra, influencing social and political discussions after nearly another century has passed. He is responsible for the shift in the royal family's interpersonal turmoils, and much of his destruction he doesn't even live to see.
This festival used to be a solemn time of fasting and meditation. Now it's just a chance to watch some rube try to stick an entire Arctic hen in his mouth.
I think I agree with most people that Season 2 is my least favorite of the 4 for Legend of Korra. What really bothered me about it was that the spirit world was kinda turned into Xanarkand from Final Fantasy X too. I miss the aesthetic of Ko's cozy little face-stealing cave. I know that Unalaq is also the least favorite villain of the 4 main ones we get, but I actually think he's pretty well written and is a solid representation of theocracy, a system of government in which religious beliefs are used to justify a leader who rules in the name of a higher power, and what happens when a system like that is led by someone who sees themselves as more than a messenger for God, but someone who is divine themselves. Unalaq believes he should become the new Avatar, a dark Avatar, to rule the entire world. This is likely due to a mixture of his own ego and Batu's control. At this rate, I don't know why Unalaq didn't talk to Varrick about making a mover. Could have had his own version of Battlefield Earth. Don't worry, I'm not poking fun at the Scientologists, I'm poking fun at L. Ron Hubbard and John Travolta. And hey, Scientologists, I read. Alright, I know you don't see Ron as a god or worship him as a deity. That's why he and Unalaq have a lot in common. Radicalized along with the Red Lotus, Unalaq was part of a plot to kidnap Korra, his niece, when she was young, to brainwash her so that she could be used to open a portal to the spirit world.
He allowed me and my friends to remain imprisoned while he pursued his own selfish goals. Unalaq becoming a dark Avatar was never part of our mission.
Then, Vaatu would be released, and the divide between the spirit world and the physical world would be no more, returning everything to the way it was before the first Avatar, Wan. While there is a silver lining in the spirits rejoining the world, also leading to other things, like airbenders existing again, Unalaq is far from a positive influence. He seems sociopathic in some ways, not caring about anyone's lives or the ecosystem of any bit of the earth. He's deceptive and manipulative toward people, and wise spirits alike, without any complication, and lusts only for power and the chance to rule the entire world once it has been returned to what he sees as its natural form. People may see him as underwhelming, but I have him second on this list because the more I think about it all, the more obvious it is. His actions literally change the world in the greatest way, following the genocide of the air nomads, and impacts the lives of humans and spirits forever. But none of it is really for the greater good.
It's in your honor, Uncle.
This is nothing. When this festival was founded, the tribal elders would commune with the spirits. People would watch the brilliant displays of light as spirits danced in the sky.
Wow. I've never seen that.
And that is a shame, since the Avatar is the bridge between the material world and the spirits. That is why I want so badly to teach you.
Perhaps his actions started out that way in his mind, like Zaheer, but his self-preservation and individual goals had him selling out the Red Lotus. And while he may have at one point thought the natural order really was a world of spirits and humans, seeing the amount of power a world like that would grant him became his true source of motivation and drive until his death. Alright, so who's in first place? Milo! I'm just kidding, but God, I hate him. I hate this child so much. Amon is at the top of this list for good reason. When I said that some villains don't have as grand or compelling an impact as others, I was referring to Amon. Let me explain what I mean. Like Zaheer, I agree with certain aspects of Amon's arguments. Let me explain further. Amon, Noatak, is a waterbender and the first son of Yakone. He not only masters the psychic bloodbending abilities his father has, he does so as young as 14, and further develops the skill to the extent that he can block channels and disrupt the flow of chi in a person's body, rendering them unable to bend. He is a skilled chi blocker and physical fighter too. He's the strongest and most capable of all the bloodbenders we see in both series, but that isn't the only reason I have him at the top. Amon is a deft liar like Azula, manipulative in his leadership role like Ozai, unapologetic and creepy like Hama, and as determined if not more than all rulers that come before and after him. He is also great at both addressing and exploiting a deep, complicated issue in the world of Avatar, the divide between benders and non-benders. When we're first introduced to the world, both of these groups are united against a common enemy due to the 100-Year War. When the war finally ends and society progresses, working to repair the damage done by the Fire Nation, the inequality between benders and non-benders is given the space to grow. Sokka touches on this briefly in the first series, feeling inadequate because he can't do something as impressive as battling fires from a meteorite. But those feelings are stoked for everyone by Republic City and the world catering to benders. Think of the advantages bending gives a person, not just in a fight, but socially and fiscally too. A waterbending healer would probably be far more likely to advance within a medical career, as would a metal-bending acupuncturist, over a non-bender because of their speed and efficiency, and near magical techniques. A metal bender could repair the bent frame of a Sato mobile a lot faster than a guy with a hammer. Able to conduct lightning? You can have a promising career at a power plant. If you can't bend metal, how far could you actually climb the ladder in the police force of Republic City? You'll probably never be one of the elite officers. Maybe you'll become a detective, but you'll work at a desk. Certain promotions and accolades will just never come your way, and you can never be a pro bender. There are entire careers and lifestyles that are completely inaccessible. Sure, Sokka was a council member, but isn't it huge that nearly all of the frightening politicians and leaders we see throughout the series are able to bend an element? Even the good guys like Tenzin have political power. Benders have extreme advantages as enforcers and as criminals. Because of this, the citizens of all nations are raised with the notion that bending is something remarkable and/or something to be feared. Amon has the power and control he does because he himself is a bender. He isn't wrong in his recognition of this inequality. It has been a major cause for wars and strife. The non-benders we see throughout Legend of Korra who are successful have to be absolutely exceptional in their intelligence, sense, and skills to really contend with benders. And people like Varrick or Hiroshi don't represent the majority. They are the 1% who made it by carving out a path for themselves and being lucky. If I grew up unable to bend, I'd be a little disappointed, I'm not gonna lie. No wonder Amon is able to amass the support he does. He doesn't have to convince anyone. The people are already up in arms. There's a reason we've seen individuals like Amon rise up in our own world after wars, economic crises, or periods of significant civil unrest. People want to know that they're seen, that they're heard, and that they're not crazy. Amon exercises a cruel intelligence over the multitude perfectly. And what's so terrifying about his methods? Well, Amon, like many other villains, isn't above murder, but he isn't just seeking to rid the world of people, he's also seeking to rid the world of the ability to bend.
Those men were supposedly the best in the bending world. And yet it only took a few moments for me to cleanse them of their impurity.
He is not only taking the lives of some of his victims, he's stripping them of their identities if they're left alive. Sounds very familiar, doesn't it? From Korra to Tahno, the fear of losing one's bending is woven tightly into their fear of being reduced to nothing.
After I take your bending away, you will be nothing.
If you don't die at the hands of the Equalists, you're going to suffer long after Amon has cleansed you of your impurity. I think Amon's psyche and justifications for his actions are some of the most terrifying traits when coupled with his powers. A dark question I have is, what was his end game? If he truly managed to disable all other benders, unless people who originally had bending have babies in secret and pass it on genetically, was Amon planning to do away with himself at the end? That's the only way things would be equal. If not, his status as the only bender in the world would not just be hypocritical, he'd be the only one in the world with this extreme, unfair advantage. You can't say Amon doesn't like being in charge or in control of others. What would stop him from exploitation once his original vision was achieved? And what about his beliefs? It's implied by his behavior and theorized by other characters that Amon isn't doing all of this for show to garner supporters. He genuinely believes that bending is an impurity, an unnatural ability that shouldn't exist. It is the sole source of problems in the world to him. Someone who thinks their horrible acts are right because of a greater purpose, equality, and no amount of pain they inflict is unjust if this greater outcome is achieved. Yeah, those tend not to be easy folks to reason with.
Something changed in Noatak over the years. The loving brother I once knew became cold and detached.
One could argue that Amon is similar to Zaheer in that he believes his actions are for a greater purpose, not solely to exert power over others. But unlike Zaheer, Amon doesn't seem like he could be talked out of his beliefs, even if he's logical or intelligent enough as a person that one would think he could understand. And it's hard to talk a man out of his beliefs who can do like this. Like Unalaq, Amon sees himself as some sort of savior.
What are you? I am the solution.
A solution. Because of his upbringing, it's safe to assume that Amon lacks empathy because he was never taught it. What Amon does have instead of empathy is a deep hatred for his father.
You always say bloodbending is the most powerful thing in the world, but it isn't. The Avatar is. He took your bending away. What could be more powerful than that? We're your sons, not your tools of revenge.
And probably some self-loathing. Armchair psychology, take it away. When he's finally exposed to his supporters as a liar, he runs away with his brother in a panic. But it's hard to tell if he does this out of love for his brother or out of a craving for something familiar in any capacity because his foundation was just ripped away. He also still poses a great danger to the world. Korra doesn't have the ability to energy bend yet at this point to take his powers away. That's why Tarrlok decides to end both of their lives. There is no getting through to someone like Amon, or it's safe to say those around him just don't see a way to do so, even his own brother. Like I said before, I believe everyone is capable of change, just, don't hold your breath every time you want to see it in the world, right? Also, with Tarrlok's bending gone, there is really no one else who could possibly challenge Amon. Noatak doesn't lament to Tarrlok at the end of his time as Amon that he's done wrong. He doesn't want to make amends. He apologizes to his brother that he had to take his bending, as if it wasn't a choice.
It's over, brother. I'm sorry for what I had to do to you.
Something he just had to do. His mindset is terrifying, but the fact that he has the abilities he does is even scarier. Amon may have an army backing him, he may have support and aid from allies, but unlike all the warlords, leaders, and schemers we've seen, he doesn't even need them. Even Unalaq would have literally been forced to kneel at Amon's feet. Maybe Amon wouldn't be able to bloodbend an entire army, but who knows? If his father could do this to a full courtroom of 50, 60 people, Amon could just sense where Korra was in a room and nabbed her, like, right out from under a table. Amon may truly want to be accepted by the followers of his movement, and that could be another reason he flees when he's exposed. But in reality, the only reason Amon has people around to help him is because it's better to work smarter, not harder. We don't see how many bodies he can have control over at one time, because he goes to great lengths to keep his bloodbending secret, but I'd wager a guess that if Amon really had to, he would be more akin to a god than Unalaq in his ability to control other people and other creatures. Amon is an allegory for a communist leader, because inevitably, no system can truly function in this world without a leader, and he's deciding how all that power is dispersed. And that should go smoothly, no?
It will be just like the good old days.
Whew, okay, I'm done. Some character rankings were clear-cut for me, and others weren't. The higher up I got on the list, I was really agonizing over like the order I wanted to put everyone in, and I was conflicted on some things. Like, that's what I love about shows like this that are so well written. I had to put in a considerate amount of time to really come up with my stances. You know, there's a lot to digest. I'd love to hear what you think of this list in the comments below, and where you'd rank villains in the series. I really love reading the comments, like, I mean it. I heart a lot of them, and this video has me excited to see how many people disagree with me and like think the order should be another way, or agree with me, or just have other things to say that like I didn't think of, because like I said, it's a lot. Let me know what other topics in the Avatar universe you'd like me to rank or talk about, or if there are any other shows you'd like me to talk about. Thank you so much, Tea Cabinet, for watching. I had a lot of fun making this video, and I will talk to you soon.